In the dark, crushing silence of the Sea of Okhotsk, a massive steel claw reached down toward the ocean floor. It wasn't searching for shipwrecks or gold, but for the invisible nervous system of the Soviet Union. Beneath 3 miles of icy water lay a thick, heavily armored cable carrying the most sensitive military communications in the Eastern Bloc. This was Operation Ivy Bells, the most daring and dangerous intelligence heist of the Cold War. It was a mission that turned the deep ocean into a giant listening device. By the mid 1970s, the United States was flying blind. The Soviet Navy had moved their primary communications from radio to hardened underwater cables that connected the Petropavlovsk naval base to the mainland. These cables were considered untouchable. They were buried deep, tracked by Soviet patrol boats, and protected by the sheer, unforgiving geography of the Russian Far East. To the Kremlin, the bottom of the Sea of Okhotsk was a private vault. The American intelligence community thought otherwise. The National Security Agency and the Navy hatched a plan that sounded like science fiction. They needed to tap a cable without the Soviets knowing it was happening. The task fell to the USS Halibut, a specially modified nuclear-powered submarine. The ship was outfitted with advanced sonar, heavy-duty thrusters, and a complex array of underwater cameras. In 1971, the Halibut slipped into the Sea of Okhotsk. It was a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek. If they were caught, the political fallout could trigger a major international crisis or even an armed conflict. The mission required precision that pushed the limits of 1970s technology. Divers couldn't go that deep. Instead, the crew had to maneuver a multi-ton automated tapping device onto a cable barely a few inches thick. The device was a massive bronze-colored cylinder, nicknamed the Cocoon. It was designed to clamp around the cable, using induction coils to siphon off electromagnetic signals without actually breaking the wire. If the wire were cut, the Soviets would see a drop in voltage and immediately know they were compromised. For days, the Halibut hovered silently. The crew worked in shifts, using long-range underwater manipulators to inch the cocoon into place. When the device finally snapped shut, it was a masterpiece of Cold War engineering. It began recording everything. Every month, the submarine would return to the site. Divers, or in later years, remote submersibles, would retrieve the tape reels from the cocoon, replace them with fresh ones, and retreat into the black. Back in Maryland, NSA analysts sifted through thousands of hours of intercepted chatter. They heard everything. They tracked Soviet fleet movements, submarine patrol patterns, and even experimental missile tests. It was a window into the mind of the Soviet military machine. The intelligence gathered was staggering. For nearly a decade, the United States had a front-row seat to the Soviet Union's most intimate secrets. They knew where the enemy was, what they were thinking, and exactly how they planned to respond to a potential nuclear strike. It was the ultimate tactical advantage. But the operation relied on a fragile illusion of invisibility. The Soviets remained unaware, but the Americans were playing a dangerous hand. Every return trip to the cable carried the risk of detection by Russian sonar or patrol vessels patrolling the surface above. The silence of the ocean was both their greatest protection and their greatest threat. If the halibut stalled, snagged, or drifted, the game would be over. The end of Ivy Bells came not from a failure of technology, but from a failure of human loyalty. Ronald Pelton, a former NSA analyst, was drowning in debt. In 1980, he walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington and sold his soul for money. Among the vast cache of secrets he handed over was the existence of the underwater tap in the Sea of Okhotsk. The Soviets were humiliated. They had been exposed in their own backyard for nearly 10 years. They immediately sent out recovery teams and dragged the seabed until they found the cocoon. When they hauled the device onto the deck of a Soviet ship, they weren't just looking at a piece of hardware, they were looking at the physical evidence of their own vulnerability. The device was later put on display in a Moscow museum, a trophy of a battle that was fought in total silence. It stands today as a stark reminder of the lengths to which superpowers will go to strip away the privacy of their rivals. Operation Ivy Bells proved that in the realm of modern warfare, there is no such thing as a secure line. The ocean floor, once thought to be a sanctuary of absolute isolation, had been mapped, monitored, and weaponized. Today, the world relies on fiber optic cables that snake across the seafloor, carrying the entirety of the global internet. Millions of messages, financial transactions, and private conversations flow through these threads every single second. We assume they are secure, protected by the depth and the vastness of the sea. But as the legacy of Ivy Bells reminds us, the technology to listen has only evolved. The physical infrastructure of our digital world is surprisingly accessible to those with the right equipment and the right amount of audacity. In the high-stakes game of global surveillance, the shadows are not just on the ground or in the air. They are beneath us, deep in the crushing dark of the water, where the cables that connect our world remain perpetually vulnerable to those who know how to listen. How many other secrets are currently being siphoned from the abyss?